Hello, everybody. Hi, welcome. Come on in, get settled. I'm so excited to be here today. And thank you for tuning in and taking all the time you are taking to see all these awesome talks from amazing people around the entire world. My name is Alison Gretz, and if I've not had the chance to meet you yet, I have about 20 years of experience in design, doing everything from information architecture, content strategy, visual design, mobile apps, and then also a lot of experience leading teams. Teams of everywhere from 2 people to 200 people at international organizations. And this presentation is really my way of pulling back the curtain on a lot of things I've learned along the way, advocating for my careers, teaching others on how to think about their careers and get what they want out of their time at their workplaces. And then seeing some common things that happen when people are either seeking to gain critical skills that helps them get to where they want to get to, gain promotions, advocate for themselves, and really speak louder about what it is that they want out of their total career, but then also where they're at with their current employer or their own vocation. We'll be doing Q&A at the end of the session, so please pop your questions in the Q&A section and upvote for the ones that you really want a lot of time spent on. And then I posted a poll as well that will just help me get a sense of who's in the room and where I can maybe go a little bit deeper to be most helpful for you. And that's just what's most relevant to you today. So check that out, let me know, and give me that feedback as we go, and then submit your questions too. I really am an ask me anything person. And if you're thinking about it, somebody else is thinking about it as well. Let's get going. The very first question I want you to think about when it comes to advocating for yourself in your career is, what do you want? But I want you to think about it at a bit more of a deeper level than maybe that first thing that comes to mind, because a lot of us have these shoulds in our head of what we should want out of our career. It's the promotion, it's the corner office, it's the pay raise, it's all these things. Because we kind of pick up from our parents and people who came before us that that's what we should want. We should want to climb a ladder and advance in hierarchy in our careers. But I challenge you to think, is that really what you want? And will that make you happy? We're going to dig into lots of different ways and things you can advocate for and try to get to the bottom of this question. So have this top of mind and definitely take some notes and think outside the box of what you think you want. 87% of the global workforce right now is disengaged and dissatisfied with work. These are people who maybe thought they knew what they want or have been through the rigmarole of our current environment, the pandemic, companies really being very company centric and not very human centric right now. This is a huge number, and this comes from a big study done by Gallup. So if you think of that, that's 9 out of 10 of people on this phone call are probably pretty unsatisfied with their current workplaces, roles, jobs, titles, and are not getting everything they want in how they're spending their days. I'm a bit of an etymology nerd, which is the study of languages, and I love doing crosswords. And as I was creating this content, I really started to think about what is a career. So things got a little bit meta. But what I love about where the word career came from is it actually comes from the Middle French carrière, and that comes from jousting back in the day. And that Carrier defined the knight on his horse, going in a big straight line at speed in a single direction with this momentum. And the definition of career that we have nowadays is this kind of single line, a permanent calling that you train for. And I would challenge this definition is actually really out of date. Many of us have 2 or 3 different sort of stories in our career. Maybe we do one thing for 10 years and then another thing and then another thing. And a lot of it is not a straight line anymore. And we don't have the same trainings and apprenticeships and things like we used to. So I'm going to have us think about career a little bit differently than we might have in the past. I think modern careers look much more like a playground where you get to choose what you enjoy, jump to the next thing, try the monkey bars out, build muscle at something you haven't done before, and then pop to the next playground again. I've got young kids, so I do spend a lot of time at playgrounds, which is probably where this analogy came from. But if we just take a step back, there's also huge shifts that have occurred from what I think about in terms of traditional career ladders and then modern career playgrounds too. Traditionally, and this is really common in the boomer generation, people would spend 20 to 30 years at one place. Over 40% of boomers have spent 20 plus years at the same employer. There also used to be a lot of reasons and incentives to stay at companies a long time. You would get a pension, promotions were maybe tied to time in seat, and you would just slowly climb the ladder. Tenure was really, really rewarded over other mechanisms. Nowadays, the average for both Gen Z and millennials is less than 3 years in one place. Millennials are only slightly longer tenure at companies at 2.7 years, and Gen Z is currently 2.3. So we're really not incentivized to stay very long at companies. And a lot of people are having to move companies in order to get to what they think they want in their careers. There's also very different retirement benefits and a lot of drive for results and money making over humanity. So I started to think about our careers as really a vibrant and colorful collection of experiences and things that we can start to enjoy and think about differently, and perhaps release this idea of a linear path, but more of a collection that we shape and we gather and we refine which pieces we want to add to our collection over time. I also think 5 year plans can be really intimidating, especially when we see those average tenures of less than 3 years in one spot. And when we think we know what we want, but we don't really know what we want, it can be very intimidating to think that many years in the future. So I also start to think about planning a little bit differently with these collections of colorful experiences. Maybe you're trying out different industries. Maybe you're increasing your knowledge. Maybe you're enhancing your writing. Maybe you are gathering different status or levels or hierarchies and climbing a ladder. And maybe at some points it is about improving your financial compensation for the role that you take. I think it can also be Oops, go back 1 second. It can also be about taking a break and doing something completely different. Maybe you take an extended leave to raise young children or care for ailing parents. Maybe you travel the world for a year or teach a language in another country. These are all things that can enhance your collection of experiences that you can bring to your next job or the next company that you spark, etc., etc. And in the day to day, it can look really messy. Like, am I making enough progress in my career? Am I where I should be? I expect to be further ahead because of the people that I'm around. But overall, the progress that you make is still going in the direction that you want it to. Part of figuring out what you want and then advocating for it is making sure that you're nudging everything in the direction that you want it to over time, even if in the moment, the month, the quarter, the year, things maybe don't feel quite right or feel messy. So I come back to this question: what do you want really? And it's tough to sit in that and question, do I want what I traditionally feel like I should want? Or do I want something different that I can have more ownership, more agency, and more control over? So, how I get to the answer to that question, and I'm going to give you a couple ways to think about this that you can rewatch this or do in your own time. But I would start to analyze, how am I spending my time? What does a typical current week look like for me? Am I spending 30% of my time sitting in meetings that don't seem to have any impact? Am I spending 10% of my time with people that I love to collaborate with? Am I spending 15% of my time commuting? And do I have no time for other things? Do I really enjoy heads down time and getting to work in a state of flow? And take that current week and say, okay, what do I want to shift by 5%? What do I want to change by 10%? What do I really want? And maybe it's half my time spent heads down working with no interruptions. Maybe it's more time in an office or out of an office or in a co-working space like I'm in right now. Where do you want to be? What kind of environment sets you up for success? And think about how you would be spending your time. You can also think about things that give you energy, that really replenish you throughout the day. So, for example, for me, as kind of an extrovert, I really love grabbing lunch with a friend and having a deep, meaningful conversation. And then also things like this energize me. At the same time, there's energy leechers. So I feel really like my energy is being depleted when I'm having the same conversation over and over again, which in some environments can happen, right? So then that's where my energy is being leached. There's going to be different answers for everyone watching this call, but start to pay attention over the next week or two, really where that energy rejuvenation is coming from, because it might not be where you think it is coming from. As creatives and as designers and people connected in tech, there tends to be this moment of forking and decision making in our career where we think about this tension between being a craftsperson and stepping into a management track. And this used to be a very precise decision that was hard to come back from. I'm going to pose that I actually think we can play with these two things and maybe step into management and try it out, but then step back into craftspersonship. And then maybe you stay in a craft side of things. And similar to engineering orgs, we've got more and more different levels and titles and ability to stay in craft while feeling like we're advancing in compensation, title, level, without having to manage people. The most mature organizations from a design standpoint might even have multiple staff levels, principal levels, and even distinguished levels, very much modeled after engineering organizations. In some companies, maybe there's not enough size of a team to have all of that. And so you may still feel like you're being forced down a management track. I encourage people two things when they're considering management. One, is that actually going to make you happy? Because you're going to have to deal with a lot of people stuff. And if people stuff is one of the things that's in your detractors bucket, you may want to think about it or advocate for perhaps like a 6-month trial period where you can return to your principal position or your lead position. Or maybe you want to step into a stretch assignment and cover for maternity leave or, fill a gap until someone's hired, but not commit just yet. Try it out and see how it feels. And then if you are stepping into that, much like I did in the early parts of my career, make sure that you're keeping your craft skills fresh too. And I'm sure there's questions coming about player coach roles and all of that. And that's definitely something we can get into. So I think there's lots of things to consider in addition to crafts versus management. Could you sidestep into another discipline? At a certain point in any organization, to be a VP or a senior vice president, or even in the C suite, you're going to need a broad range of skills beyond just your one discipline. So if you really have these very, very high ambitions, which is fantastic, maybe you're going to need to spend some time in marketing or step over and manage in product for a while, or step over and maybe you try out something completely different. Maybe you want to stay in that senior individual contributor role, but change industries. Try a manager role, as I've said, or maybe you step up into director plus leadership and really start to hone those more broad strategic and even administrative skills that come with that. Or maybe you become your own CEO and you start a business or you experiment with freelancing so that you can get more of a broad range in your career playground. Once you've got a bit of an answer to this, what do you want? And be open to it changing as you go. I want you to embrace wanting what you've decided you want. Maybe you want to earn a lot of money every year. Fantastic. Maybe you want to work in nonprofits and feel really close to a good cause. Fantastic. Maybe you never want to manage people and you just want to be an IC and really have expertise. Fantastic. What I'm trying to communicate here is this is a no judgment zone. Whatever it is that you want to achieve, or you want to receive from how you spend your time in your career and in your vocation, embrace what it is that you want. Start being able to talk really clearly and crisply about what that is and why perhaps it's meaningful for you. One article that has really inspired me as I was putting together this content was written by L. Luna, and it's an article on Medium and also then became a book called The Crossroads of Should and Must. And when you embrace what you really want, in El Luna's words, she feels like you're compelled to take on. It's a passion. It's a project that you can't not do, and that may be for some of us, who are very, very creative, something that maybe doesn't have the same kind of compensation structures or things that we might see in big corporations or design and tech roles. There's also the sort of should. And, there's definitely something going on with folks kind of hitting that sort of 40, 50 point in their career where they're realizing, I've been doing the should. I've taken the should path my entire career. And now I've got to figure out what my must do, my passion, the thing I can't not get involved in is. Definitely check out this article, as it's so inspiring, especially for creative folks as they think about what is it that you really want, and then being able to talk about how to get what you want. Um, ooh, I wonder what's happening there. So we're also, I think I'm hammering this point home pretty well. We're taught to really measure success in salary and title. And I encourage all of my teams and everybody that I work with to separate those two things. Sometimes it's going to be easier to advocate for one versus the other, and it's going to be easier for your boss and really their boss to say yes to one or the other, but maybe not both at the same time. Now, that can feel a little weird if you're taking on more responsibilities and the salary isn't coming. But if you're getting the title, that's going to help you then get a different salary at the next job, for example. So you may choose to make creative decisions to get what you want ultimately. So we're taught to measure success with these things, but more and more in our environments, they're harder and harder to receive, even when they are fully earned. A better measure, perhaps, is a whole slew of things. How's your mental health? How's your physical health? Do you have enough time in the day to invest in your humanity and get what you want out of your whole life? Are you enjoying what you do? Do you have free time? Can you take an afternoon off without pressure? And so, job title and salary really only become a small part of what makes us happy in how we're spending our time. Once you have started to own what it is that you want, I want you to own your story about it. And what I mean by that is no apologizing for wanting what it is you want. I also want you to look back at your career and everything that's brought you to this point and really embrace and create the story that you want to tell about it. No one is going to look and say, well, it may have taken them 3 tries to get this promotion, because no one's going to remember that. What you can then say is you built resiliency and tenacity and you continued to push for what you wanted. And so you can really pivot whatever the story is behind each career move you make. I also want you to think about having an NPS score, and whatever your feelings are on NPS, you can argue in the comments. NPS stands for Net Promoter Score, if you're not familiar. And that's where you kind of take a bunch of answers and you say, okay, how do my, oh my gosh, I'm going to get it wrong in front of a bunch of amazing industry people, but How do my the people that say awesome things about me minus the detractors, and where do I kind of end up? And especially if you're trying to gain seniority or move up part of the ladder in the playground, you're going to want to make sure that you have a good NPS score. More and more, getting a promotion or a change in title or stretch assignments tend to be very political and about you having this good overall NPS score and a great growth mindset to be able to successfully get what you want if it's some of those traditional things. I also want you to think about that owning the story. And when I'll time out and tell a little bit of a story. When I've been in the room for many, many career decisions, whether that's bonuses, pay increases, promotions, stretch assignments, etc., everybody sitting at that table has a different part of the story. And so if you're not owning your story and proactively getting out there what you want all those people at the table to know, it ends up being a bit like the story of the blind man and the elephant, where each of them is touching a different part and is familiar with a different part, but they all have a complete different interpretation. So someone's touching the tusk and saying like it's sharp, it's a spear. Someone's touching the foot and it's like big and it's a tree. Someone's touching the sort of main body and thinks, oh, this is really flat and hard, it's a wall. And someone's got the tail and thinks it's a rope. Your story and what you decide to tell about your path in your career is very much like this. Maybe someone a couple jobs ago has this very specific perspective and has a story about you that they've made up in their head and attached. Fabulous. Leave them to it. You get to tell the full picture of your story, and you can tell every piece of your experience in a way that really conveys what it is that you want, who you are, and how you've learned and interpreted all of your experiences to create the semblance of a whole. The most important thing with this story, though, when you're talking to executives, when you're presenting work either live or in your portfolio, is being able to tell it succinctly. And I love to, in all the classes that I teach and with my coaching clients, I always say, what's the headline? And when I was managing really large teams, I needed to receive this from my teams. I needed them to cut the cognitive load for me as a leader and tell me what's the headline. So when you think about your story that's encompassing your total career and what you would like next, how do you say it in one sentence? And that's not easy. I can tell you as an entrepreneur, I've probably rewritten my entrepreneurial headline like 20 times in the past year. And it takes practice to really find the words that communicate who you are and what you want, and also summarize the totality of your career in a way that you can say in an elevator. It's like if you're a startup or if you've watched Silicon Valley, you need to be able to say that pitch and have it down. How I attach this to portfolio websites, and I hope this is a useful nugget, is you've got to really be designing for that user of your portfolio website, which is typically either a recruiter or a very overwhelmed manager who's trying to just make a decision on, do I spend more time looking at this candidate's website? Are they in the ballpark for the role I'm trying to fill? And so they need to get the headline immediately in 3 minutes or less. And so have your headline, your story in one sentence, and what it is that you will bring to the team, and what it is that you want, which should be the same thing. Have that right there. And the same for every case study. I really encourage people to start with the headline. Tell me what the outcome was and what you did, and not just a headline that anybody could have, but something that really summarizes and gives me the takeaway up front so that I can make that decision. Do I spend more time here? Is it relevant to me? That was a little bit of an Alison sidebar. So when I think about clarity, clarity in saying what you want and owning your story is getting to a deeper level of some of these common phrases that I've heard a lot in my career. When I hear someone say, I want to move up, I actually don't know what that means. So we have to get to that level of detail and clarity. By moving up, are you talking about a traditional ladder? Are you looking for the next title in a in a progression framework, for example? Or do you just want to be higher paid and more rewarded? Is that what it's actually about? Or do you want to feel more of a feeling of progress and like you're making progress, but you actually don't care about the title per se? And the pay is fine, but it's not the thing that's actually driving you. So really push yourself to decide, when I say I want to move up, what is it you're actually asking for? If you're bored and unfulfilled, what are you yearning for? Do you want to learn something new? Are you not satisfied with how you're spending your day? Do you need more excitement and variety? So, really help translate what it means. I want more authority. I want people to listen to me. Are you trying to build influence, or you want more control in decision making, which might be a bit of a fallacy, but that's a sidebar for later? Or do you want to be more strategic so that you're seen more as a person with authority in your organization? And maybe you're burnt out and exhausted, and what you actually want is more flexibility, more time off, the ability to find what replenishes you while still meeting your responsibilities, for example. You also don't get what you don't ask for. And this has been probably the biggest mistake I have seen many, many people make in their careers is they get so frustrated and they don't feel seen, but they haven't actually said it out loud to the right people in a clear way that is actually actionable. 56% of employees only talk with their manager once a year or less about goals, about what they are progressing towards, about what they are responsible for. And I would be talking to my manager at least once a month about progress I'm making towards my goals, towards supporting the business, towards whatever it is I'm advocating for, and having that constantly on their radar so that they're reminded and they're very, very clear. This stat honestly shocked me because I really believe part of getting meaning in our workplaces is having healthy relationships with our manager and having a clear two-way conversation about making sure we're working on the right things and going in the right direction together. In design, over the past 10 to 15 years, we've spent a lot of time making progression and level frameworks. I've built about 6 of these in the past 10 years. And these tend to be a very HR and legal led process. They are not a silver bullet, and they are not a map or a set of check boxes to get you to that next level or to the promotion. Think of this as a baseline, like promotion readiness gut check, and a tool that's there both for a consistent hiring process, but then also a consistent legal process should anything go awry. Pay attention in your organizations who HR reports up to, and then you can kind of tell what's maybe actually underlying some of the activities that HR is driving. So you'll maybe typically hear, if you are talking about these leveling frameworks as a tool in thinking about promotion, that you're expected to be performing at that next level before a promotion can occur. And a lot of the time, promotions tend to be retroactive because of the options now that decision makers have. There's people externally who probably have 5, 10 years experience doing this and may want to do a director role, for example, a second time, compared to someone showing a lot of potential internally, but that might be a pretty big risk because somebody doesn't have the experience yet. So use this as a tool for conversation. Some of the best tools and frameworks I've seen actually build in ways to have a meaningful conversation with your boss about what this actually means and what it looks like. And if you're getting feedback about a particular thing, go to the level framework and try and figure out what is the language being used about that particular thing. For example, maybe it is influence or managing stakeholders, and have a discussion on that language. Get your boss and their peers and their boss to explain, what do these words mean to them? What are they looking for? What does excellent look like? And then start to try and peel apart where the gaps are. There's also no promotion fairy godmother. And I do understand that this happens occasionally, but I've rarely seen it in my career where someone comes in on a Tuesday and they're pulled aside and the fairy godmother has said, "You're promoted." This doesn't happen very often. People who get promoted have asked. They've raised their hand. They've been having conversations maybe for 6 to 12 months about what it's going to take to get promoted. They've made it very clear that that is on their growth agenda. How do people really get promoted? Oops. I think there's 4 key things. One, like I said, they make it clear they want to be promoted, and maybe they even are contributing to their own promotion process. And this can be a little divisive. If, for example, you're in a large organization and you have to fill out a form or something that really explains why someone is ready for promotion, take that on. If you're seeking to get promoted, do as much of that work as you can to save your manager having to do it. Now, you may think, but my manager should know. Absolutely. And they're also running around like a headless chicken with lots of other people to support. So if you do the first draft, you're going to know that they have a really good starting place. And you're also going to know that all of the details and all the things that you simply know better are included. I have seen people be kicked out of promotion pools because these documents were not filled out correctly or enough. And I think this is something that you can take back into your own hands. And if you're not aware of what this is, ask your manager. Is there legwork and administration you have to do to really pitch me as ready for promotion? Can I take that off your plate? You also make yourself a no-brainer candidate. And if you've been in one of my courses or you've seen me speak before, you've maybe heard me use this language. But what I mean is like being on the bench and ready and being known as ready for that stretch. You've ticked a bunch of the boxes. You're ready for promotion into that seat as soon as one's available and as soon as the context and timing is right. You're also actively applying for open positions around you and above you. And part of that, and never surprise your actual technical boss at this moment, always tell them you're interested in applying for it. Part of that is it gets you on the radar across the organization, not just with your immediate boss, but with their boss, with their HR partners, and other people. And the best thing that happens, even if it goes nowhere, is you just got to expand your network of people that are aware of you. They now know what you want, they know what you're looking for, and they can become advocates, mentors, and bring other opportunities your way. The fourth one, and this is the foundation, I actually think, is that sometimes this takes time, iteration, being determined, not taking the first no too personally, because 99% of the time it's not actually about you. Getting people to sponsor you. And what I mean by that is they're talking about you being ready and awesome and promotable in rooms that you're not in. And then I do think there's a really good dash of luck and timing involved as well. I'm going to give you a script for your next one-on-one for whatever promotion it is or thing that you're advocating for, to just try and make this conversation a little bit more approachable for your boss, actually. Like, hey, boss, I'd like to be a no-brainer candidate for promotion to lead designer. Can you help me understand what that'll take? Or what's something I can focus on in the next 3 months that will get me one step closer? A big mistake I've seen people make here is say, I expect to get promoted in the next 2 months or I'm out. And that becomes a conflict and a thing that's really difficult to actually have a dialogue about. I've even had one person start on my team and on their first day, when I was saying hello to them, they said they expected to be promoted. And that was just wild. Another thing you can do, and I hinted at this a bit with the progression framework, is really manage up. Follow your boss's lead, but help them be successful. This is, leading your leader or managing up, and think about how can you proactively show them that you are proactive, engaged, really thinking ahead of their needs. What do they need to be aware of but take no action on? Can you give them priority project updates so they're not having to ask you, where's that thing or how did that turn out? What do you need from them? So maybe you're really highlighting and bolding, like, these are the things I need or want your input on, and everything else I've got handled. So you're showing this level of competency and expertise at your current level and showing that you are probably ready for something. My favorite as a VP of design was when someone would even include some of this in an email subject line, like action needed by August 10th or FYI only, so that I could read it at a later date. You are responsible for gleaning value and what you need from them, because really, especially at a certain point, they've got so much more on their plate and so much more cognitive load that the more you can do from them, the more stretch assignments you're going to get, pulled into rooms in place of them, etc. I also want you to pay attention to the conversation that's occurring. And I've seen this really hold some designers back when we're so passionate about the details and we're seeing everything at this really granular level. And we're talking about button corner radiuses and component naming types and like all of these different things. But we may actually be sitting in a room where somebody's talking about multiple departments and work across departments, or a customer experience that touches all of these different things. And what I see designers doing is getting into the room and then feeling like they have to contribute something, but they don't have enough perspective or feel like they can speak about the conversation that's going on. So they actually pull down the conversation to something they're comfortable with. But in doing that, you're actually depleting value from the room and the table that you're sitting at. So pay attention to this and notice it over the next week in rooms that you're in and conversations you're in. What is the actual conversation, and what level of altitude is it at in the organization, and what complexity are they talking about? I also want you to own your own success. And this comes back to redefining success in your career and what that really means for you. From this big study that informed this book, The Power of Small Wins, the thing that as humans really boosts our well being, our motivation, and our perceptions during a single workday is making progress in work that we find meaningful. It's become one of my missions to teach people how to find meaning in their day to day. And one of the ways that we do that is an exercise where we create our own impact cascade. And sometimes you have to hunt around your organization to really figure out, what are the goals? What are we aiming for? If you're in a big publicly traded company, listen to the investor calls, look for the summary from the CEO, but also start to think about, how does that big, gigantic goal trickle down, to your boss? What are their career goals? What are they also trying to do? What do they want to be known as, and have their department do? What about your product as a part of that? Or what about your personal goals? And think short term and long term at the same time. And literally every Monday, I would start my week with this and say, okay, how am I moving forward the biggest impact things that are commonalities or win wins between my career goals and what I want to get out of my time in this position, and the big goals and everything in between? Because those are the win wins that then I can find meaning in for me or my team. And as a manager, helping your team translate from the big highest altitude goals to what they want is part of creating those meaningful conversations and meaningful career development plans. So I come back to this, and I want you to think about filling in all these blanks with all the things that you want and might make you happy in your career story. And we've talked about, what do you want? Like, really? Want what you want, embrace that thing, no judgment. Doesn't matter if it's money or meaning or both. Own your story, really craft that narrative and rewrite it in ways that work for you. You don't get what you don't ask for, so get out there and start saying the thing. And then own your own success. Take it back into your own hands, but define what success is going to mean for you. There's some key mindset shifts we've talked about as well, from career ladder to more of a playground. that you'll be magically seen and rewarded for hard work to you've got to ask for what you want. That opportunities are going to come from your immediate boss to your boss can be your partner and your ally, but you really need to take the lead and manage that. A societal definition of success to your definition of success. And when you make these mindset shifts, you can truly start advocating for yourself and everything you want in your career. So, in a world where careers are like playgrounds and you have to create your own map, we have awareness of these imperfect systems around us that all these humans are bumping into each other. You get to decide what your career is going to be. You can find me around the internet. This is definitely a conversation I continue to spark and be a part of, so don't be a stranger. My website's there. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I write an occasional newsletter. It's certainly not every week, and it's definitely not a lot of spam, where I really investigate how do we show up as good humans in our workplaces? How do we improve the future of work? And how do we really thoughtfully design what we want in our careers? So thanks for listening to me. We're going to move into Q&A. So let's see if I can successfully, oops. Okay, Lily will let me know if I just messed something up. So this first question, what are some strategies to collaborate with your manager on career growth, promotion, and pay when you're the only employee in your discipline in the company? Okay, so I'm going to give a shout out to something I didn't plan on, but I also volunteer and run a Teams of One discussion group with Abby Covert's The Sense Makers Club. And so for a team of one, when you're like the only one, there's so many unique factors. And that discussion group has been so great to come in and kind of have these very detailed discussions in a supportive group with other teams of one. So that's just a plug for the amazing work that Abby's doing with the Sense Making Club. But you've also got this layer of education that you're going to have to do. And the first thing I would do, Abby Dank, is figure out how much detail and awareness is your boss actually willing to learn about your discipline and why a promotion would make sense. And don't take it personally if they don't have the cognitive bandwidth to really understand why you should be at a lead level versus a senior level, for example. I would do some competitive work for them. And I would say, like, look, typically a promotion to this for my discipline tends to happen at around these years after somebody has shown these skills for this amount of time. And here's a competitive set of pay. I would really like to get to here by this date, is another really good way to say that. Also, be aware of what your current company sort of levels are for other similar disciplines and look at those expectations, which are usually HR defined and not necessarily your boss, and then start to translate for your boss. Well, a lead product owner in or a lead marketing person would showcase these responsibilities. I've been showing them in these ways for my role and help them translate and make those connections. Awesome. I think I answered that. So let's go to the next question. In my current job, I'd like to be offered more stretch assignments. How would you suggest I approach leadership or pitch ideas? Ooh, I love the idea of pitching ideas, and I would tie those to the goal cascade that we saw. So, and maybe you see if your boss is looking really stressed out and you say, like, hey, I've got some bandwidth, I'm looking to take on these things. Can I help you with that? And it might feel like it's something really small at first, but that's your opportunity to build trust in your reliability to get that thing done without needing your boss and their cognitive load. And so that would be kind of the first thing to then start being trustworthy of getting more complex stretch assignments. I think pitching ideas that are the win-wins, especially if you've gotten feedback on things you should improve to get what you want at your current place, would be really good stretch assignments. I would also make sure you're saying it out loud. And approach is such a good word because you want to make it approachable. One way I would think about that is letting your boss know, like, hey, in in one of our upcoming one-on-ones, I'd love to talk about some stretch assignments that really help me demonstrate these skills. Let me plant that seed with you and we'll come back to it. I'll add it to our one-on-one agenda in a month, right? So you've planted the seed, you're giving them time to noodle on it, think about it, raise their awareness to be listening for good stretch assignments for you. And then you're going to follow up and keep asking in a non like hectic or naggy kind of way. You could also see if there's partnerships across your organization that are like mentorships laterally as well to just continue to learn things and maybe find things that sit between departments that you can find collaborators on that make something better for the company or your department, especially if they're attached to that goal cascade. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Lily. Question. I'm currently looking for job opportunities from a junior role to a senior role. What would be your advice in using the strategies you share to be promoted outside of the company? That is such a good question. Thank you. I think about this in two ways. If there's any way for you to get a title bump where you are, it will make your life getting to that next step a lot easier. The next thing I would think about is that layer of owning your story. Does everybody at your company actually put junior on their resume and on their LinkedIn, for example? I've seen people do all sorts of weird stuff changing their titles, and you don't want to be misleading or lie or anything like that, but be honest with the experience that you have that goes much above that. I also think when you think of owning your story, you have an easier time to own your story with an external company where you can already be talking about your work, your approach to the work, your work ethic, the skills you have as if you are at a senior level and ignore the title that you have right now. It's how you talk about yourself. I wouldn't even bring up I'm currently sitting in a junior role, for example. I would be simply saying I'm looking for a senior designer role. I've demonstrated these experiences. Here's my work, yada, yada, yada. If there's still a gap and you're getting this feedback, oh, you're just too junior, you need more years of experience, yada, yada. I'm saying yada, yada, yada a lot. But that could be valid. And sometimes it just takes enough time to steep in a role and responsibilities. I think that's so true with management, especially. I would try and get additional experience outside of work or your sort of day job in the form of volunteering in ways that you get to talk about what's expected at that next level. For example, especially for folks trying to get that first manager role too, be leading a board or a volunteer organization. Lead a bunch of volunteers is amazing testing ground for management. And I know that that's not exactly this question, but I would think about it that way. And hopefully I gave you enough on this. If I didn't, ping me on LinkedIn and we'll have a chat. Is it necessary to take actions for promotion or can we remain at the current stage for another year? Whatever you want, Marvin. Whatever you want, whatever makes you happy. You don't have to do a promotion. You can even say no if a promotion does land on your lap. If you're happy where you are and you're feeling like that pie chart and all the things you want is like exactly where you want it, keep doing what you're doing. It's awesome. Thank you for the terrific talk. Oh, you're welcome. Any advice if you're trying to move to another country, US to UK as a junior in the UX industry? Oof, that is hard, AJ. I have done an international move, but it was for college on a student visa, for example. Um, and the other direction, UK to US. That's going to be really, really tricky because junior roles are hard to get anyway in each company. And at that sort of, for lack of a better word right now, don't come at me about saying like lower level roles. There's going to be less relocation budgets too, especially international relocation is very, very difficult. So I honestly don't know if I know enough about this to be a good source, but I would also start looking at all the other ways that you can immigrate and then think about maybe the career side coming later. Because if you need sponsorship too, this is a huge investment for a company. Awesome. We have about 5 minutes left, so let's see if we can pop in another couple questions. And I did promise on my LinkedIn, any questions that I don't get to, I will answer on LinkedIn tomorrow. Can you share an example of a good headline versus a weaker headline? Oh, that is maybe one that I would need to think about and do as a LinkedIn post. But I'll use a couple of these question examples for one. Like I might think, Alison Gretz, lead UX designer specializing in healthcare and retail, something like that. A weaker headline might be seeking a step up from junior designer. I love design systems, right? Because the first one is owning my story and saying what I want. It's also sharing a bit about my relevant experience that is valuable to the other person, right? The sort of industry. So off the top of my head, that's a good example. And the weaker one is sort of positioning you down. It's pulling yourself down. And it's also speaking about something that you just kind of love to do. But that, especially if you're trying to position yourself up, maybe isn't the most attractive thing at that next level. I hope I did okay with that one. Great presentation. I wanted to get your thoughts on a situation where your manager is not really interested in your career growth at your current company. Hi, Pasan. I would push on a couple things here. Your manager is not really invested. What does that mean? Have they told you, like, I'm not going to be investing in helping you get that promotion at this company? And think about, is it really that they're not invested in your career growth, or that they're trying to communicate there's some factor here that means career growth here is going to be tricky? Right? So really try and pull apart, is it actually about the manager's personal investment in you, or are they trying to communicate something about the broader circumstance? And then, maybe ping me. We can go deeper on this separately, but that's a tricky one. Okay, I see a thumbs up. That was our last question, but definitely feel free to ping me on LinkedIn if you did have a question that you didn't want to ask for any reason. I'm always happy to have a chat. Thank you for coming. We're going to wrap this up so that you can get to your next session. I'd love to stay in touch and see you on this wild internet. And I'm just so thankful to have had the chance to chit chat with you all today. So I'll see you in an hour, maybe, if you're coming to my other talk, which is the panel Women in Design Leadership. So come on to that one too. Bye, everyone.